Well, Mother's Day. You know, when we think of mothers, of course, we think about children. I like how honest children are. And, I ran across some questions that were asked to elementary kids about their mom. Question was asked, how did God make mothers? One kid answered, magic plus superpowers and a lot of stirring. Question, why did God give you your mother, not some other mom? Answer, because we're related. Or another answer was, God knew she likes me more than any other moms do. Another question, what does your mom do in her spare time? Answer, moms don't do spare time. Some of y'all can relate to that. What would it take to make your mom perfect? Well, on the inside, she's already perfect. On the outside, maybe some plastic surgery or something. Question. If you could change one thing about your mom, what would it be? Answer. She has this weird thing about keeping my room clean. I'd get rid of that. And I think this answer must have come from my girls. The answer was, I'd make my mom smarter than she would, or more smarter than she is. Then she would know it was my sister who did it, not me. Heard that a lot when our kids were growing up. It wasn't me, it was her. Still hear that, I think. Well, every year I have this dilemma about this time on special days like Mother's Day. Like, what do I talk about? What do I talk about that hasn't been already said? And earlier in the week, I thought I had a message all planned out, but then it got changed about Friday. And so I want to talk about my mother this morning. You know, I'm blessed with a great mother. My mother never had a job. She worked hard, and she raised 6 kids, and she helped out on the farm. And before I was old enough to drive, I remember riding along with Mom in the grain truck, hauling corn and beans to the elevator in the fall. And during busy times of the year, spring and fall, planting and harvest, she would bring supper out to the field. And it was always great as we were out plowing or whatever it was we were doing. And about 5:30, 6 o'clock, we'd see this big old LTD Ford coming down the road, and she'd open up the trunk, and there was a hot meal all prepared for us, and it was great. Now, on the farm in those days, we had a lot of people stopping by all the time, seemed like. We had neighbors, and we had salesmen, the seed salesman, the feed salesman, the machinery salesman, and fuel, and all those people. And I think they liked to come to our place because Dad would often invite them in the house, and Mom would have something baked. She'd have some cookies or some cake or a piece of pie and coffee or tea or a glass of lemonade on a hot afternoon. And if it was close to mealtime, it wasn't unusual for Mom to set an extra plate at the table and invite them to stay for a meal. And I remember one neighbor that for us kids, he got a little bit annoying because he'd come over early in the morning. About 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, we'd hear his pickup truck coming in the driveway. And we go down to get ready for school, and here's old Jimmy Moody sitting in the kitchen. Some of you all remember old Jimmy Moody. He was sitting in our kitchen, and he'd come and he'd have coffee with Dad in the morning, and he did that for quite a while. But Mom never turned anybody away. She was always kind, and didn't matter if it was our closest neighbor or a total stranger. You know, they say a man marries a person like his mother, and I certainly did that. Some of you that have been to our house, you know, as soon as you walk in the door, Goldie's offering you a drink or something to eat or something. And so I've been blessed by some amazing moms in my life. And I want to talk to you this morning about some characteristics of the mothers that have challenged me in my own life. I ran across this verse this week as I was studying, and it really just grabbed me. Here in Colossians, if you look at your notes, Colossians 3:12, it says, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience." There's 5 words in that verse that I want to focus on this morning, and it says, clothe yourself with them. In other words, wear it like your clothes. Like if someone sees you, that's what they see, as if it's the clothes that you wear. It's very plain to them. I want to talk about those 5 characteristics this morning because I've seen them modeled for me through my mother and through my wife. The first one is compassion. Compassion. Now, what is compassion? Well, according to Webster, it's a sympathetic consciousness of others' distress together with a desire to alleviate it. You know, my mother was, or still is, a compassionate person. I remember when I was a kid, my older sister had a friend, and I was pretty young, and I don't remember all the details of the situation, but this friend was from out of state, and she had some issues, and she came and she lived with our family for a while. And I remember she was like an older sister to me for a while. Mom was compassionate enough to allow this person to come and just be like one of the kids for a while and lived in our house. And it was great. She did many things like that. You know, but Jesus is our best example of compassion, isn't he? Matthew 9:36, this is talking about Jesus, says, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Jesus looked out and he saw others in distress, and he had sympathy toward them, and he had a desire to help them. And how did he do that? He did it by healing their sick, by teaching them, by feeding them. My mom showed her compassion by feeding the hungry, by visiting the sick, by helping the poor. And she was always making food for somebody. And Goldie's the same way. She's always making food for somebody. Just the other day, we went up to see Jody in the hospital. And Friday, I believe it was. And by the way, she's doing much better. Keep praying for her. There's a possibility she may be able to come home Friday. And she's up and about some, and she's improved a lot since we'd seen her a week before. But, this is what Goldie does. She said, I'm going to make some party mix and take it up for them. You know, they probably need something to snack on. Travis is sitting there. Jody's dad's sitting there a lot. So we walk in with some party mix and some Cokes, and that's just what she does. You know, it's just the compassion. She sees the need, and she feels it. And my mother was the same way. She was always compassionate, always looking out for other people. So I want to ask you the question this morning. How compassionate are you? When someone looks at you, is your compassionate as evident as the clothes that you're wearing? I've put a little scale in there where you can grade yourself from 1 to 10 this morning. How compassionate are you? Are you really compassionate, like you're a 10? Or are you somewhere in between where maybe you need to work on that a little bit? How compassionate are you? The second word in that verse is kindness. Kindness. Now, according to Webster, kindness is the quality or state of being kind, treating people with kindness and respect. You know, my mother was always a kind and respectful person. I don't remember her ever being rude and disrespectful to anybody. My brother Ernie, some of you knew him, had health problems for about 20 years. And my mother would often, she'd do things for Ernie all the time when he was having health problems. He came and lived with them for a while when he was recovering from surgeries and so forth. And she was cooking for him. She was washing his clothes. She did everything for that boy. In fact, she was so kind to him. Some of us other kids said sometimes, you need to stop and make him do stuff for himself, And but that was just her nature. She was very kind. This world could use a lot more kindness, couldn't it? Our greatest example of kindness in the Bible is the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan comes along and he sees someone in the ditch who's a different race from him. But that didn't enter his mind. Their two races weren't even hardly talking to each other. the Pharisees come along and they just kind of pass by and they're like, we can't be bothered with this. But the Good Samaritan, he showed kindness. He showed kindness to the guy that was laying in the ditch. He takes him to the Holiday Inn. He gives the manager his credit card and says, you pay for whatever he needs. You just take care of it for him. That was kindness modeled for us. And today, we still talk about the Good Samaritan, and we talk about a lot of ministries that are called Samaritan, that's used for a lot of things. Why? Because of his kindness that he showed. Proverbs 12:25 says, anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. Kind words make all the difference in the world. A kind word spoken at the right time can alleviate anxiety. It can just take that anxiety away, take that fear away when you say a kind word. How you doing on kindness this morning? If you were to rate yourself from 1 to 10 this morning, how do you rate on kindness? Are you up there at the 10 level, or are you somewhere in between? The next one is humility. Humility. Webster says humility is a freedom from pride and arrogance. It's easy to see people's pride and arrogance. It kind of sticks out when a person is proud and arrogant, but a humble person is often working behind the scenes. A humble person, you may never hear about some of the great things that they've done. I remember my mom years ago. She started doing this thing every year, and I'm not sure exactly how it got started, but every year she would make a special cake for the Mennonite relief sale. If you're not familiar with the relief sale, it's up at the Arthur. They've held it every year, and it's been going on for, 50-some years probably. And they raise money for missions around the world. And so they bring items in, they're auctioned off. Well, every year she would make a German chocolate cake, and she'd take it up there, and they'd sell it on auction. Well, it started out, we had a neighbor, old John Durbin, who would come, and he would buy that cake every year, and he'd bid on that cake. And the first year it brought $20, and then the next year it brought $30. And they'd hold that cake up, and they'd say, this is the German chocolate cake from Ella Bontrager. And pretty soon it was bringing $100. And I don't remember what the highest was, but I believe it was over $200 that cake brought. And every year, old John Durbin would buy it until he passed away. Then his son, Johnny Bill, started buying it. And I believe his grandson even bought a few of those until Mom got to where she couldn't make that cake anymore. But she did that for, probably 40 years. Mama did that. And every year it would bring more and more, and she'd make that money for charity. After us kids were all gone and Mom became a little older, she became a prolific quilter. Beautiful quilts. Every year she would donate one to the relief sale. And when the announcer would announce, this beautiful quilt was made by Ella Bontrager, it would often be the top seller in the sale. But I never once heard my mom brag about any of those things. She exemplified a true humble spirit. See, Mom understood this verse. Those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. What is humility? It is freedom from pride and arrogance. Humility is just being normal without being prideful and arrogant. Philippians 2:3 says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Value others above yourselves. Mom always did that. She always put others above herself. That's what humility is. How you doing on humility this morning? Do you go around tooting your own horn, or do you let other people do that? Are you willing to work behind the scenes and let others praise you when things are praiseworthy? Humility. The fourth one is gentleness. There's nothing that I can picture that exemplifies gentleness better than a mother with a newborn baby, another with a mother with a small child. And I love watching my wife when there's a baby. She just loves to take this baby and hug on it and kiss on it and so gentle. It's just nothing like that. 2 Corinthians 10:1 says, by the humility and gentleness of Christ, I appeal to you. Think about the gentleness that Jesus had when he invited the children to come to him. These verses in Matthew 19 says, then people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked him. Jesus said, let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. Here he is, Jesus, the King of the universe, yet so gentle with children. Philippians tells us, let your gentleness be evident to all. In other words, be clothed with gentleness. Be clothed with gentleness. When someone sees you, do they see gentleness? Or do they see something else? What would be the opposite of gentleness? What would be harshness? It would be abrasiveness in word and in actions. When others see your Facebook posts, do they see gentleness? Or do they see harshness? Do they see abrasiveness? I confess that I'm not always as gentle as I should be. Sometimes I'm too blunt. Sometimes my wife has to gently correct me on the way home and say, you should have said it this way. You should have maybe not used those words. You should have said it a little differently. I love this verse in Colossians, where it says, be wise in the way you act toward outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt. You know, I love salt. Probably too much. Salt or seasoning can take something that's barely palatable and make it so you can eat it. I like to have, most mornings I have eggs for breakfast, and eggs without salt I can barely eat, but put a little salt on there or some of Goldie's seasoned salt or pepper or something on there. It makes it good. It's the same way with our words. We take our words and you put some seasoning on them. You say them in the right way. You say them in a gentle manner. You say them so they're palatable to the person who's hearing them. So apply that to your words. Season them with salt. You know, my mama had a motto that she always used. She said, if you can't say anything good about someone, then don't say anything. Got kind of quiet around our house sometimes. You get the idea, right? And she used to say that a lot. When us kids were growing up, we'd be going off about somebody or something. Now, if you can't say anything good about somebody, don't say anything. And so we'd learn to just shut up. But gentleness. Mom was always gentle. So how you doing on your gentleness level? Think back over the things you've said this last week, or maybe the things you've posted online this last week. Were they gentle? Or were they harsh? This verse says, be clothed with gentleness. Wear it like you do your clothes, so people can see it. They can see your gentleness. Then finally, patience. 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 What is patience? It's the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. The capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. Proverbs 15:18 says, a hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel. I remember growing up, there was a plaque on Mom's wall, and it's probably still there. And it says this: God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. God grant me the serenity or the peace, the tranquility, the patience to accept the things I cannot change. You know, there are some things in life that you just can't change. I don't care how hard you work at it. I don't care how hard you try. I don't care what you do. There are some things that you just can't change. Jesus said this in Matthew 6. He said, which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit to his stature? Which of you by thinking about it can grow a foot taller? Which of you by thinking about it can grow an inch taller? You can't do it. So why worry about it? Say, oh, I wish I was taller. There's no point in spending mental energy doing that. There are some things in life that you can't change. The weather, it's rained a lot. I know. Why worry about it? I remember growing up, Dad was the worrywart. And on the farm, my brother and I used to always say, well, we don't have to worry about anything because Dad does enough for all of us. But Mom was always the calm one. She was like, well, don't worry about it. It'll all work out. And it always did. We can't control the weather. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. The courage to change the things I can. There are some things you can change. Well, it's going to rain. Well, you can put a raincoat on. You can do that. You can wear the proper clothes or whatever. It's going to freeze. You can cover your tomatoes. You can do those things, okay, that you need to do. But the wisdom to know the difference. The wisdom to know the difference. Knowing what you can do and what you can't do. What you have the power to change and what you are powerless to change. See, that's where patience comes in. Sometimes the difference between what you can change and what you can't change is not clearly evident. Sometimes you have to just wait. Sometimes you have to just have the serenity to accept things. My mama was very patient with me. I was kind of a rebel child when I was a teenager for a while. And not once did she threaten to kick me out of the house, although she probably should have. But she was patient enough to give me the time to come to my senses. Mama, for many years, has been the caretaker of taking care of others. Now she has come to the point where she's 89 years old, to come to the point where the children now need to take care of her. And that's hard for her. It's hard for her to accept that she has to have kids come take care of her. And even to the point where she said just put me in a nursing home, because she hates to see us come and disrupt our lives to take care of her. She said, just put me in a nursing home, they can take care of me. But Mama's taken care of us for many years and done many things for us. And now the tables are turned, and we have the opportunity to serve her. How you doing on patience this morning? Are you a 1? Are you a 10? Are you somewhere in between? How did you score? That verse again. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, with kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. How did you score? How did you score? I want to wrap up with a story. 4 brothers who had gone to college and moved to the big city and became very successful doctors, lawyers, and businessmen. One day they got together and they were discussing the gifts that they were getting their mother for Mother's Day. The first one said, well, I had a big house built for Mom. The second one said, I had a $100,000 theater room put into that house. And the third brother said, well, I bought a new Mercedes-Benz from my dealer, an SL600, and I had it delivered to her. The fourth brother said, well, you know how Mama liked to read the Bible. But her eyesight is so bad and she can't read anymore. So the other day I met this preacher, and he told me about this parrot that they had, that they had taught to recite the Bible. It took 20 preachers, 12 years to teach this parrot to recite the Bible. And all you have to do is say the reference, and this parrot could spit out the verse. It's an amazing thing. So I had to pledge $100,000 per year for 20 years to the church to buy this parrot. But I figured it was worth it, so I bought it and I sent it to Mama. The other brothers were very impressed, and after Mother's Day, Mom sent out her thank you notes. And she said, "Milton, the house is so huge, I only use one room, but I have to clean the whole thing, but thanks anyway." Said, "Michael, you gave me a huge theater that can sit 50 people with surround sound, but all my friends are dead. I've lost my hearing and I'm nearly blind. I'll never use it. Thank you for the gesture just the same. Marvin, I am too old to travel. I have my groceries delivered, so I never use the Mercedes. The thought was good, though. Thanks." Then she wrote, "My dearest Melvin, you are the only one who had the good sense to give a little thought to your gift and give something practical that I could actually use. The chicken was delicious." Some of y'all will get that after a while. Here's the moral of the story. Moms don't need the extravagant gifts. They need you. They need you. All right. Let's pray. Father, we thank you this morning for your goodness to us, your love, your mercy, your grace. We thank you for moms. And Lord, I just pray for your blessing on each and every mother that's here. For all that they do, we lift them up to you today. Father, I pray that you would give them wisdom in raising their children in the principles of your word, to bring them to kids' church, to teach them at home, because our world has so many problems, so many issues. They need that strong base in their home. I pray that you would help each of these mothers as they teach these characteristics to their children and model them for their children. Bless them, Lord. Be with us throughout this week, and pray that each one of us could honor our mothers in a special way today. And pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.